Welcome to the Coach's Table podcast, where coaches come to grow personally and professionally through real-world application and online education. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another show, the Coach's Table podcast. I'm extremely excited for today's guest. I'm super excited for the conversation that we have been having that none of you get to hear because it was off air. But the conversation that we're going to have, because sometimes we bring in guests that are the experts, and sometimes we bring in guests that have a lot in, they know a lot about a lot. And that is what today's guest is. And it's going to be super exciting because I think you're going to like his philosophy, and I think you're going to resonate with his philosophy as well. But before I bring him on and formally introduce him, guys, just like any episode you hear, if you get one of three things from this, if you get encouraged, if you get entertained, if you get any sort of education component to this, if you resonate with it, if you're like, you know what, I learned something, I think somebody else can benefit from this, all that we ask is you share the show. The show is growing. It's growing continuously, which is fantastic. It's growing both on Spotify and it's growing both on YouTube. And I appreciate you that do share it. I appreciate you that are continuing to listen. So if you get something from this, share the show, post on your social media, tag myself, and drop comments on YouTube if you have not already subscribed. So today's guest, Mr. Mullan, what's going on?
Hey, man, you got the intro down pat, huh?
I've been practicing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't want to admit it. I stand in the mirror and practice, you know.
Oh no, you're good. The whole drive, I drove to campus to sit in our Hall of Fame room for this. The whole drive in, I'm like, okay, my name is Bobby Mullan. I coach this place. Like, you gotta go through it.
Yeah, well, when I'm fortunate enough to get to talk to guys like you, it gives me an opportunity to also rehearse. But you know, I just kind of go off. I just let it rip. You know, whatever feels good in the moment too. I think that's really important.
Yeah. No, I feel you. Like I told you before we even started recording, when you first asked me to come on, I was like, I'm looking at previous guys that you've had on, and I'm looking at like mutual guys that we follow, and I'm like, all right, Hura's got his tendinopathy stuff. Let's see. We're going through. Austin Yoakum's got the flow state and games and all that, and Will Rattel's got his hustle in Olympics and all that kind of stuff. I don't got a thing, so I don't know. We're not going to have like one topic. It's kind of going to be off the cuff a little bit, so I'm excited.
Well, I think honestly, if we're being extremely transparent, that is 95% of strength coaches, and
yeah.
I love all the guys you mentioned. I'm close with them. I communicate with them. I think they're super intelligent dudes. And I and you said this earlier, but I think there's a lot of people, like, we learn from people like that. We take the good for what we believe it is, implement it, and see, right? Sometimes when it's the only thing you do, it might hurt you to a fault, but sometimes not. I also believe the riches are in the niches, and be an expert in one thing. I firmly believe that. But at times I also think dabbling in a multitude of areas from a basic standpoint is really important too.
Yeah. I mean, we said it earlier, but I think that's the point that I drive home most of, like, anytime there is a methodology that really catches fire, like many do, there's something to it. Like we were saying, I don't think is knees over toes like the end all be all way to train every single person that you ever meet. Maybe not, but if they have like hundreds of thousands of people, there's probably something to it that you can learn from. And I kind of go around, I try and take a deep dive into anything that I kind of find interesting, and I'll implement it on myself for a number of months, learn ins and outs of it, and I'll find pieces like, oh, I really like how this taxes stretch shortening cycle, or I like how this one makes whatever feel. And I just like find the things that I enjoy of it and the things that are not for me. And then I kind of like have that in my utility belt to implement. And even if it's something that doesn't work for me, if I come across someone who's like, oh, you know what you probably would respond well to is this thing. And I feel more well-versed going through more methodologies. Just kind of always chasing down, like finding what works. That's always my angle. Like what's gonna work best for this person. And that's kind of how I end up going around like that.
I think I really like that. You know, everybody uses the analogy, and I think it's really good, of like, add tools to your toolboxes. And so, you know, if we're looking at some of those things, like Yeah, I think all of them have merit. I really do. I think there's a time and a place for things. I think there's a time and a place to be, really like we're training like hard, and like there's a time and place like we're having a lot of fun. We're playing a lot of games, and we're training at the same time, and we're really more flowy than like
Yeah.
we're grinding like all the time. Like, no, we're not. Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, for real, for real. Like, yes, we're training hard. Don't get me wrong. We are training hard consistently, but we're not like, we'll never have any fun and just like squeeze on the thing so tight. Like, no, like, look, we're going to work hard, play hard. And I
Yeah.
subscribe to that. I love that. Like, we're going to work really hard and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. And oh, yeah, like we're going to play games and laugh at each other. And I will make a ton of jokes about you with the expectation you bring them back. Like,
Yeah.
kind of like that's just kind of what I do, how I do it. It's worked so far. It's just like a good relationship, you know?
No, I think so many coaches end up like handcuffing themselves because they're like,
Mm.
the methodology says this, or my 12-week program, I wrote that week
Mhm.
3 we would do this. And
Yeah.
you're like, dude, look how bored everyone in this weight room is. Everyone
Yeah.
hates doing this non-counter movement, blah, blah, blah. Like, I
Yeah.
can't do any more drop and six
Yeah.
and keep anyone entertained. Of like, do something that challenges the person that day. And sometimes it's like, you can read a room when people come in, and it's like, they
Yeah.
come in. Sometimes it's just like, hey, you guys are going through it right now in your season or at practice, or like coach is really, really putting you guys over. And we're gonna check the box today. Like, we're gonna come in, we'll do work, we'll do minimal work, we'll roll out, we'll send you guys out. And
Yeah.
then there's some days like they start, like you said, like, I'll start cracking some jokes and they'll jaw back, and then you're like, you know what, forget all this, someone grab the jump mat, like we're like, things are popping off today, we're gonna jump, and just ride that wave.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's like I think there's merit in like working really hard, doing things when you don't want to do them. I think there's
Mm-hmm.
merit in like mental toughness, but and I don't mean that as in like we're doing dumb training, but I mean that as like pushing through things when you don't want to do them. I think there's merit in that. I really do. But I also think there's a ton of merit of like, the guys are coming in or the girls are coming, they're super energetic. They're, ready to be in a competitive state. Like, yeah, look, okay, cool. We're all jumping and seeing who can win. Like, to your point, you read the room. And sometimes the room is like, everybody lay down, shut your eyes, don't talk,
Yes.
take a 15-minute nap. And I don't care if we do any work today. Like,
Yeah.
dude, if you do that at times too, like I'm so serious. Like, turn the lights off, no music, nobody says anything. Maybe play some like sleepy music, white noise, whatever. Um, they will wake up and be like, I really needed that. It's like, yeah, you did.
Hell yeah. No, I
You
call that
know?
every team I have, the favorite 2 words they hear are gravity stretch, because that's what we'll do. I'll just grab a piece of floor, starfish
Yeah.
out. We're gonna let gravity stretch you. Lights are off. Close your
Yeah.
eyes. No one talk. Like,
Yeah.
it really might be the only time in their day they just like, hey, stop. Just be for a moment. And it's literally every team's favorite thing. And they'll come in sometimes like, hey, we need a gravity stretch today.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, cool. And sometimes you're like, yeah, that's not what we're doing. Sorry.
Correct. Yeah. Cause like once you do that, once you kind of open that can of worms, at times some may try to abuse it, right? But I look at it as like, does 80% of the majority really need this? Because like you can read their face, bro. You can read their faces.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, all right, so yeah, you guys don't want to do a dynamic warm-up today? Cool. You know what we're gonna do? All right, we're gonna take a nap. Like, I'm serious
Yeah.
though. Like, oh no, a Division 1 coach is saying that. Yeah, like, yep, we do that. We do that. And I think it's sometimes the best thing for them.
I think even like this is I don't know if this is like doable at every college. Like, one of the best mornings I've had are one of our teams in season did 6 a.m. lifts all in season. And they are dragging because they have 8 p.m. practice to 9 or 10, and then 6 a.m. which is like the least ideal thing.
Yeah.
And one of the mornings they came in and they're just like still asleep in the hallway.
Yeah.
And I dropped on them. I was like, all right, you guys get 3 chances at a half court shot. If you make one, you go home. And they just like everyone woke up.
Yeah.
And one of the girls made it, and they had like the third and final attempt, shot a half court shot, made it. The room erupted, and they all lost their minds. And then they went to practice and had like literally the best day of practice of the semester. Just like that alone. And is that what I wrote for the day? Fuck no. But
right.
It's what they needed.
Well, and like needed. Yeah, man. So like that's okay. So what you just said, you have an 8 p.m. practice, whether that's logistically ideal or not, I don't know. I don't understand the context enough to make a statement.
It's one of those like it's the only time the field's available. They got bumped, so like it's the only way to have it happen. So it sucked, but it's what we had to do.
Yeah, that's where it's tough because it's like, yeah, we all know this isn't ideal, unfortunately, but we still have to do it.
Yeah.
That's where it's tough, because it's like, would we all love to be in an optimal state and everybody train at 9, 10 a.m. With practice following right after, and you know what I'm saying? Like, sure, would love that, but we also recognize that's not the reality of the field, the business, the logistical constraints, and that's where it's tough because it's like, yeah, we'd love this optimal thing, but yeah, man. Okay, so talking about you and what you got going on, for those of you that don't know, you are contracted, right? Which I think is great, but you also service 9 teams. And if you have a strength coach at a university and they have 3 teams, that's a full plate. They have 4 teams, it's like, whoa, right? Some are doing 7, 8, 9. I did that at the very, very beginning of my career as well. It was a lot, and you learn to make do. But it's how do you do that, man? How do you do 9 teams?
I'll say that like the dynamic of it is pretty cool because the way it works here is like each sport gets an allotment, and they're like, hey, do with this money as you wish for strength conditioning. If you're certified and want to train the team yourself, you train them. If you want to hire outside. If you want to pocket it. Like whatever each team wants to do, they do. And the company I work for has been here for, I think 12 or 14 years now. And just started up with a couple of the teams, and it grew and grew and grew. And it's this cool dynamic of like, hey, if you're doing a good job, more teams sign up, and more coaches are talking about you in the coaches' offices. The athletes are talking about it, and they want to work with, like, you got to work with our strength coach. You got to work with this person. And it's this kind of cool feedback loop of like, okay, you're really doing a good job. And if you aren't, you'll find out. But in terms of how I do it, I mean, I've had a buddy or two at work, like at the small NAIA schools, and you have like 24 teams. And kind of like we were saying before we started recording was like, I think there's a big difference between doing what's easy and doing what's right. And it's way easier to write like the workout of the day, or like the male workout for all the male teams, and like the female program for all the female teams. But obviously that's not the right thing to do. Of like, that's not what each team deserves. That's probably not what this person needs in their training. And so I try to go about like, not so much doing sport specific assessments of like, okay, soccer needs these things to be able to practice, to be able to play. It's more of like, what does this group of people need? They're coming in here. This is a pretty weak group, or this team has a lot of weight room experience because they all were high school powerlifters, or this team's got a lot of transfers coming in from D1s that have previous strength conditioning experience. I can lean on them and let the freshmen kind of like hitch a ride and follow their lead. So even year to year, it's different of how to approach each team, but I just assess like there's a little bit of what does the sport need, but it's mostly like what does this group of people need. So each team has their own programming.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think that's really interesting because at times I think we can get caught up in sport specific. Like, what is sport specific? The most specific thing is playing your sport, right? So that's that. But then you look at it as like, well, does everybody need to push, pull, squat, hinge, lunge, carry, rotate? Yeah, probably. Right. Like, Yeah. Does everybody need to have a very solid aerobic base? Yep. Does everybody need to sprint and jump and decelerate, change direction? Yeah, right. Like,
Check.
okay. Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's like, okay, well, to your point, like, yeah, it could be very easy to write the same thing for everybody because maybe to a certain extent they all could benefit from that. But like you're saying, like, is that what's right for the sport? So with that, when you have different sports that are in season, out of season, when you are looking at different sports, male, female, or whatever the case may be, how much time are you allotting to programming? Because programming for 3 teams can get a lot. Programming for 4 teams, but programming for 9 teams, like, doing what's right, not what's easy, can also be a challenge because it's like, well, if I need to be on the floor coaching, because you're probably the only one, right, that is servicing those 9 teams, how are you getting the time to program for them consistently as well?
Oh, for sure. So I think the biggest thing is I try not to look at like everything on my plate at once. Because if I sat there and tried to on Sunday, let me write 9 different sports program, there's not enough hours in a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or it'd probably end up being like, okay, we're all front squatting on Monday. We're all like,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty conscious of like, while we all need to, squat, press, pull, hinge, all those components of like, I try just for the sake of them feeling like they're getting the individual touch that they are. I try to make sure it's not like, I don't want softball to look at volleyball's workout and be like, oh, it's the same. They're doing the same thing we're doing today. Like even if it's like, we're going to try and not front squat at the same time, this team is front squatting and there's going to be overlap, but I just try a little bit of like, just to give them a picture of it. But for the most part, it's like fall teams start before spring teams. So I just have to worry about these 3 or 4 teams right now. And these 2 teams are doing testing the first week. So I'm going to worry about laying stuff out for their testing, and that's it. And then when the next team comes in, I'm going to write their first 3 weeks, and it's just going to be a steady progression from there. And then at that point, I have their stuff written. The winter teams and spring teams, they'll get kicked off. I'll start writing their first 3 weeks. We'll be in the mix with them when the fall teams are ready for their new batch, and it kind of just luckily stagnates like that back and forth. But it's mostly just like, hey, don't get caught having to do everybody at once, and definitely don't try and write a semester worth of stuff all at once.
I think that's what can be the overwhelming part, right? Is I got 4 teams, 3 teams, and like 2 of them are super demanding and they want this and that. And it's like, okay, well, like, what do you need to do today? And it's like,
yeah.
It's tough, man. It's very tough to be like, what do I need to do today? But I think that's a very good, interesting approach. Like, okay, well, like, I need to service these teams today. I'll get to you guys when I get to you guys, or tomorrow I have time, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think that's been my biggest, like, I've gone down a lot of rabbit holes of trying to go fully into different training methodologies. Like, there's probably a 2-year stint where I just tried to be Kelly Sturman, and then probably a 3-year chunk where I was really trying to be Cal Dietz, and like just echoing whatever words I heard them, like just word behind how to try. And honestly, the last 2 have just been like, just be a good coach and coach a good workout, like coach a good session. And it's a thing we're really trying to figure out how to teach our interns right now over at Spectrum, the facility I work at. Just because it's their first time learning any training methodology, or maybe it's their second one they've ever learned. And we do kind of like a NASM, Exos kind of programming as like an intro. And they get so caught up in being like, okay, I have to move this exercise into this exercise, and like 3 sets by 2, and I have to do non-counter movement, it's counter movement. And you're like, just coach the session, make it a good workout. Like, if we're bored, kick it up a notch. If we're struggling, leave it there. And that's honestly been the last couple of years of just like, don't worry about the program being perfect, or are cleans better than dumbbell jumps, or front squats and back squats and lunges and split squats and push pull, whatever. Just like, what stimulus are you going for? What is the outcome from today? And like, was it a good session? And I like every single hour when that session finishes, I like sit back and reflect on it. I was like, okay, was this a good one? And you feel it when it is, like you get lost in it, and you're afterwards almost euphoric. And then there's also the bad ones where you're like, oh, that did not flow. Of like they got backed up on this one, no one cared about doing this exercise, and I just couldn't figure out a way to get it click. And I kind of the last 2 years, that's really all I've worried about. It's like how to make it a better session.
So I like that approach. I heard somebody say the other day, and I thought it was really good to like, yes, there's all these methods and all these things out there. And they're like, right now, I'm not focused on knowing everything about every method. I'm focused on being the best coach that my athletes need for me today, or the coach that I wish I had then. And I was like, I like that, you know?
Absolutely. No, that's huge.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I was just like, yeah, because I think we can get so wrapped up in like reading the next training book, reading the next philosophy. And I think there's merit in that. I really do. Because if we're going to be a professional, we should know our craft. We should be a professional in our craft. We should be the expert in the craft. We should know the sleep, the nutrition, the obviously training, conditioning, speed, plyos. Now throw sports science in there. Now throw psychology in there. Like, you should know a lot of that, but that's also a plethora of information. And I understand that you will not be an expert on all of that. But I also think there's a lot of merit in like, be the coach you wish you had and be the best coach you can today. I think that's valid.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's like, what does this team need more than like, what does this sport need? And the people in there is so much more than just like the high injury rates for tennis is blah, blah, blah. Like, no, what does this person need? Where's this team at? Where's the program at? Like, they're coming off a bad season, a great season. They're learning how to be a good team. That's been a pretty cool thing to watch happen the past year here. Is like, we've had a lot of teams who they took a dip during COVID of like the team success wasn't great. And then this past year we had a lot of teams that started doing really well and in conference or place getting ranked nationally. And it's been really cool to watch them learn how to win and what it's like to be on a winning team. And there's plenty who've talked about like, oh yeah, in the past, if we had a great match, then the next day we have off. And like this team's learning like, no, we're a good program. We win a match, it's back to business the next day. Like, and learning how to handle the pressure of like, we're on a 7-game win streak, or we got high expectations. Someone ranked us nationally for the first time. Awesome. And I think you have to like coach those things too. And it's, you're not going to coach it if you're trying to implement Poliquin, whatever.
Yeah. So how do you go about coaching that? Like you have a team that's ranked nationally for the first time, which is amazing. Congratulations, by the way. You also have the component of like, we're on a 7-game win stretch, or like we just won, so we get the day off. Like, no, we don't. Like, we don't. Winners come back and they train and they do what's required. Like, what?
Yeah.
Job's not finished, right? Like that kind of mentality. Right. How do you kind of coach that? We can talk culture. I know everybody in S&C loves the culture word. So do I. I think I like to call it environment.
I like that.
How do you build the environment? Because, and let me go on, and here's why. Like,
do it.
Yeah, well, how you build that environment, right? So we call it culture. I think culture is a product of environment, and it's a byproduct of that. And what I mean by that is environment is the expectation, right? So if I want to, this is from the book Atomic Habits. If you've never read it, I really enjoy that book. But if I want to start taking my vitamins, right, in the morning, and I need to put it next to something that I do in the morning. For instance, I drink coffee, because it's a conscious reminder now, it's right in front of me, that I have to then take my vitamins before I have my coffee. And if those vitamins are in the cupboard, right, I won't open the cupboard to take them because it's too much energy. So I have to structure my environment to support my goals. And that's the same thing with training. That's the same thing with nutrition. If I want my athletes to eat well, eat healthy, I need to provide the environment where good food is available, where good training is available, where all of these things, it's now become an expectation of habit It's now become an expectation. You act this way. You do these things because the environment supports that and encourages that, rather than if it's dirty, if there's trash on the ground, you're not going to say like, we hold a high standard here. Like, no, you freaking don't, because there's trash on the ground. Like, you don't.
Yeah.
Right. But if your environment supports the success and your environment leads you to that, I find that to be so freaking important, because now that's a culture. It's an expectation. If you walk by a piece of trash, you pick it up. Like, that is the expectation. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that. I definitely do pieces of that. Like one of the first things I did when I came in was for all of our teams, probably also a way I juggle like the multiple teams is I don't set up the lift for the teams before they come in. Like other D1s that I've worked at and have interned under, like, hey, you got a 1 hour setup before run and lift start. This is like, come out, warm everybody up. I'll tell you what the first block is. You guys need a bar, a green band, dumbbells, each rack, 30 seconds, go. Yeah. And they like, go get the equipment out and get it set up. At the end of each lift, even if the team coming after them is the same team and like split up into two groups, or they're also using a barbell, we don't leave anything out. Like, you guys clean up and put everything back. And what I kind of talk to them about the beginning of the semester is like, you guys, this weight room is for athletes only. And everyone eventually learns, like, soccer's at 4, basketball's at 5, lacrosse is at 6. And they know whatever team was in there at 4 o'clock. So if they come in at 5 and see the place looking like shit, they know whose fault it is. Yeah. So we're gonna leave the weight room proud of how it looks, and like we're stamping our name on this room every time you leave. So make it look a way that you're proud of, that you'll say, yeah, soccer left it like this, or lacrosse left it like this. Yeah. That's like probably one of the earliest things I started doing.
I like that. I'm a huge advocate of that as well. If you're so freaking strong you can lift that weight, guess what? You're strong enough to put that shit back. Like,
yeah,
dude, it's not hard. And I also look at it as like, the weight room is our house, right? Mm-hmm. I don't go into your house and trash your house. I don't go into your house and eat all your food. I don't go into your house and throw trash everywhere. Don't do that here. Simple. Yeah. Don't do that. If you do, you're not training. I will not.
Yeah. We do like a strike system. So like every item that is left out of place or a J hook at the wrong height is a strike. So the first semester we had like these 7 strike sessions or like 14 strike sessions. And it would just be, I'd make up something that sucked to do 14 of. And it was, they'd be like, sometimes you get back to back with a partner, lock arms, like you got to sit down, stand up 19 times or whatever your number is. Another time was like, they had a 3. So I had them, our racks are all portable in our weight room. They're not like bolted in the ground or anything. So it was, you had to, with your rack group, lift the rack off the floor and hold it off the floor for 3 minutes. And it was like, don't leave shit out and we won't do things that suck.
Yeah, I do a similar thing. Mine are burpees.
Nice.
And I've learned this from people that I've been at. I just double it every time. So
what's the worst you've had to do?
It starts at 100. Strike 1 is 100. I know everybody, oh my gosh, you're using exercise as punishment. Nah, shut up. Shut up. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't. It's simple. It sucks. Nobody likes doing it. Do 100 burpees. If you do it again, it's 200. I don't care. I'm not picking your stuff up. You're an adult. Be an adult. Act like an adult. Simple. It's not hard. And I have everybody sign a student expectation form. And so that's all written in there. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. Like I learned that stuff from the military. Get everything in writing. Lay your expectations out up front. And then, dude, it's so funny when they know they messed up, the shame on their face right away. They know. It's just like, you're late, 100 burpees. I don't care. Like, if you're late and you didn't communicate, 100 burpees before you start.
I think that's part of like what building the environment is about. Is just like not being a dick for being a dick. Because I think there's a lot of strength coaches that liked the authority piece and like, oh yeah, part of this job is I got to be a dick to them. Like, no, you just gotta hold the standard of like, this is what I said we'll do. If you don't do it, it's not because I don't like you. It's because you didn't do the thing. So we're gonna we're going to have reprimands for it.
Yeah. Well, I look at it as like it's a job. Okay. Especially now you guys are NIL wise, you're getting paid. You want everything, but you are unwilling to do what's required. And so if we show up late to a job, we don't show up, we don't do the job, we can no call, no show. Guess what? You don't have a job. You can't feed your family, right? If you sign NIL deals, and you don't fulfill what's required, you don't get paid. Pretty simple, right? And so it's the same concept to me. And so we signed this student athlete expectation form. It also lines out what they can expect of me. I have the same consequences if I'm ever late to a lift, which typically will never ever happen. But if I am because I got held up at a meeting or whatever, I will do the same stuff. So it's not anything I'm asking crazy, but it's like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. Simple. Like, you're an adult.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I think that's so much of like, I hate to use the buzzwords of like leading by example, but I think a lot of what I'll try to do, I don't know if I purposely implement a lot of things to create environment or culture.
Yeah.
I think I like try to make a good session, and I'll try to put people together that like, I know this person's going to fire this person up. I'm going to try and put older kids with younger kids so they can like watch, oh shit, that's how much weight we're going to move by the time we're seniors. Like, that's crazy. But when I first got here, I had a couple teams that would come in and they would be crickets the whole lift, and just kind of like the look on their face, like, I really want to be here. Like, I have to be here kind of look.
Yeah.
And, I remember really distinctly the first offseason with this team was like, they didn't care to be there. And our first max day, like, we were testing everything out to get numbers, and I'm like losing my mind if someone hit like a 65-pound bench, and like it's a new record. It's awesome. Yeah. And I would get so excited and screaming, and everyone's kind of like, what is this? This dude's like way too hype about this. But I'm legitimately, this is just the way I am. Yeah. And throughout the semester, I'm cheering for anyone who like struggles hard and gets their rep, or like decides to go up and does whatever. Like, every accomplishment is celebrated, no matter how small, no matter if it's a new program record or just a personal record. Like, celebrating celebrating their accomplishment. And then by the end of the semester, like, you just see all these teammates screaming for each other, like, we need people at rack 4. They're maxing at rack 4. And like, they got it. But I think they needed to see it first. They didn't know how to cheer for each other or how to support each other, just because it wasn't displayed for them before. They didn't know how to be a teammate in that capacity. I think that's part of it. Yeah. So, I think that's just displaying the characteristics like you want them to exhibit, but not doing it in some fake way. Like we talked about before, like you're useless, you're useless. Like, it's just so cringy, because it's just like, that's not how they are, because they also are in their office sipping coffee, like upset to be there as a coach. Like, you just got to be yourself. And I legitimately get excited. And I think it has shown some teams of like, this is how we're going to behave in this weight room.
Yeah.
And they feed off of it. And it's really easy to create culture in that sense. And again, culture, but
yeah. I 1,000% agree with you. I legitimately do get excited for people when they get better. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people get into coaching, is because we genuinely want to help people, and we generally want to see them do better. And so it's natural for us to get excited about that. The classic, like, my passion pays the bills. Yeah, well, that's great, but it doesn't. But then, yes and no, right? Like, you can be passionate, and I'm extremely passionate, just like you are. But it's the classic adage of like, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And to that point of what you were just saying, like, you displayed that you cared, even if it's a minuscule change, progress, PR, whatever, even though PRs aren't minuscule, but like, even if it's a small change, you're like making it a big deal. And I find that really important, because I think a lot of times athletes have never had somebody support them and tell them like, you're doing good things, or like, you're making this a big deal, because they just like shake it off. And I think we do this in life too. We're just like, we don't celebrate the small stuff,
Definitely. And how many kids on that team don't get a lot of spotlight during their sport, or like they might not be on the field a whole lot, or they might not get to score a whole lot in their game, but like, so they don't get celebrated a bunch, or they don't get acknowledged a bunch. And the coach, I'm sure, throws in the like, hey, we wouldn't be here without our practice team kind of speech, because it's true. But like it becomes a little bit of like, yeah, okay, coach. So when they actually get a chance for spotlight and get to be celebrated, like when we max push-ups with if depending on the team size, we'll like, hey, one person at a time, all eyes in the room on this person, like pump them up, cheer them on. And it's cool. You can like see how much it means to some people when they maybe they don't get it a lot at home. Maybe they do. And it's just cool to have their team cheer for them either way. But like, I think it's a piece that you're not going to read in a book about how to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And like, I was talking to someone, it's like working with female athletes. It's like watching them get their first pull up, watching them get their first push up.
Oh, so cool.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. That's a big push for us. We're trying to have like every one of my female teams, we're trying to have the whole team be able to do a pull up. Like, it's a huge standard of like, it is a very cool benchmark to say like everyone can do a pull up, or like everyone can jump 20 on the jump mat, the entire team, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. And like, again, going back to like the environment supporting that, like the athletes supporting the athletes. And then there's like a level of expectation, like you will struggle, like, like you will struggle. Like we embrace the suck, if you will, but like, no, like you will struggle because that's the only way we're getting better. Right. Okay. So you like to get athletes really elastic and can jump and you can as well. So walk me through
I don't know if I'd say that, but
walk me through your process, your thought process of like how you build explosive athletes.
I think probably the obvious ones are like they have to sprint and they have to jump.
Sure.
And a couple of people that I've like learned a lot of that content from, like my first introduction to anything like that and training stretch shortening cycle, and like what really rewired my brain was reading Triphasic, and not just like the 2 weeks eccentric, 2 weeks ice, like reading through his high force, high velocity, and his high performance peaking of AFSM, like all that stuff, really just rewiring how to move fast. And not just always doing everything slow or doing everything at a pace that will get you through this whole session. Like literally learn how to like grip and rip something or move your body fast is a skill. So like I've learned a lot from Cal. And then do you know Chris Corfus?
I've heard his name. I'm becoming more familiar with him, but I'm not too familiar with his work right now.
Yeah, he's like a partner of Cal, but he's a sprint coach up in Illinois. He actually was my U.S. history teacher in high school, and ridiculously kicking myself for not having worked with him. I thought he was just like the speed ladder guy, and just world-renowned speed coach instead. But he, like between the two of them and RPR and learning like how bodies move and like how things work in sync with one another, and things that don't, like a big. You watch anyone who spends too much time in a weight room try to sprint, and just how clunky everything is and not smooth, and there's no rotation. So I think like combining all those components, it's usually just like they need to sprint. So we're going to go full speed at some point. And once a week, because diminishing returns on sprinting is 5 days.
Right.
So we'll do top speed work once a week. We'll do some sort of power thing, whether that's dumbbell jumps or cleans. And it's mostly just like not neglecting training stretch shortening cycle. So like just not getting caught up in being in the weight room and just doing gym stuff. Like we'll do 10-yard starts with the Browers in our weight room. We'll do a full plyo block of like depth jumps, lateral jump, like whatever you want to throw in, but like doing a lot of things that teach your body how to move fast instead of just deliberately slow. And not just doing like move up barbell fast, but like you move fast, I think it's a key component.
Yeah. I think that's huge, man. I think that's like, I don't mean to say this in a like basic way, but I think that's good training, like, not like, oh, super serious, good training, but like, that's good training. Like there's thought process, there's merit, there's depth, there's like, we're getting after, like, that's good training. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. It goes back to that, like, what's the stimulus of today? And if you got warm and we play spike ball for 20 minutes, or like we play knockout or something that, like, gets people hyped and excited and like a little sweaty. And then whatever the thing that is that day, it might be jump mat work. We'll do some like band assisted jumps to like really get you feeling like you're getting up there and get like things firing quicker. And then we'll all hop on the jump mat, or we'll bring out the Vertec and try and see if you can get the max, like highest max touch, or we'll do fly 10s, and it'll be like, if you set a PR that day, that is a good session. You do that, you're solid. We can do like a heavy lunge afterwards too, even better. But like sometimes it's all you need. You don't need to go through your A block, B block, C block. Like that was a good session by itself.
I think that, gosh, there's so much depth to that. It's very similar how I structure mine too. Like, first of all, spike ball is the most elite warm up.
Most elite.
Dude, I love it. It's just so much fun. It gets the competitive nature going. I like to do it outside, shirts off. You get a little tan going on.
Isn't it like a little frustrating that no matter what really scientific or technical warm up you put together, nothing beats spike ball? Like it's crazy.
Yeah, and then like, if you do it right, like you bring music outside too, so you bump into some tunes, whether it's country, rap, whatever. You got a little tan going on. You're talking shit. You're having a good time. You feel good, and then you're like, all right, let's go train now. Like you just feel great going to train, and then you like crank the music up. Like, I love those sessions. Those are my favorite. And then like maybe you sprinted before, maybe you sprinted after spike ball. Maybe you didn't sprint that day, but maybe you just did spike ball, right? Like, you could play it for hours. But that's pretty much how I structure mine too. I like to play games.
Yeah, definitely.
I think games are huge. Simple tag, like seriously, crazy. Yeah.
We did some game. It was like a physio ball tag kind of thing of like, there's two teams on the other side of the court, and this team, all are taggers. This team is trying to knock a tag, and it was like you can only tag them if you're holding the physio ball. So they have to like pass the ball around, and then you try and lunge and tag somebody, but you can't move if you're holding the ball. And like it's probably the hardest fitness thing we did. Like everyone's breathing heavy, and then also everyone PR'd their vert that same day.
Yeah, look at that.
It was so dumb. Like no matter what we did that semester, that was the only thing that got PRs, and it was like, then that's fine. Then that's what we need. That's good.
Right, but also like the second, third order effects of that, of like that's a memory that they will always remember. People probably talked about that forever. Oh yeah, right. And it's like now the culture component is like, we're gonna work hard, but like, we're gonna have a lot of fun doing it. Like, do you remember when we played tag? Like, simple stuff, right? And it's just like, heck yeah, let them go, let an athlete, like that's it,
I think one of my favorite things to say whenever we're doing something that's really fun or that sucks a lot is I'll just be like, we're making memories.
I like that.
Like if it's a really fun game, or like we're doing some awful conditioning thing, I think both those things are the things that people walk away from college with. And I don't mean it in some like, in the fourth quarter, you're going to think about that time we were on. Like no one does that, obviously. But I think there is. Like no one's in the huddle being like, remember when we had to do 1,000 step-ups? Like it's not a real thing. There is a little bit of like, if you accomplish some shit that was really hard, you feel confident about like, we went through that shit and that was good. And like, then you go through something else that builds confidence, something else. And then when you're in that fourth quarter, you have confidence. But that's like another thing. We'll do like, I think the like biggest mistake I've made, as well as like now is a funny memory. My first session with the men's lacrosse team, I really wanted to be like, we're going to set a standard today. And like, these guys like to have a good time. I'm going to be like, you don't touch the line, do it again. And I was like really, really in my head about it. And we did a warm up for like 27 minutes. It was like, you're going to do Spider-Man stretch. And if, no, you didn't open up with the right arm, doesn't count. Try it again. But like wouldn't tell them what they did wrong. So just be like, it wasn't good, do it again. It wasn't good, do it again. And we got to inchworms. And I think we did inchworms for, I don't know how long, a long time. And we were doing them outside on the turf. And I kept being like, if you don't lay down on the ground, doesn't count. You did it wrong. If your hands come off the turf, doesn't count. You did it wrong. And the next day, for the whole 2:00 session, everyone who was there, 2nd-degree burns on their palms. They burnt the skin off their hands.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, dude, why didn't anyone say anything? Like, you guys were burning. Like, I appreciate the, like, we're going to put our heads down at work. But, like, if you burnt the skin off your hand, I'm so sorry. I wish someone said something. We could have done lunges. Like, it would have been just as fine. But now it's become a really funny memory of, like, yeah, it's a great day to do an inchworm. Anytime it's really it's become
funny.
a good
That's funny.
huge mess up. But it's now a funny memory and like something they'll talk about forever.
Forever. Like, yo, my coach gave me 2nd-degree burn.
Or just get like on alumni day in 15 years, they'll come back like, bro, the first day with our session, burnt the skin off our hands.
Literally.
Not that you should like aim to do that, but that is creating memories.
Yeah. So it's funny. 2 points to that. One, I think the principle of what you're saying has a lot of value. Whether that's intentionally just being like, we're going to get this right, like in a stern manner, and kind of the understanding of like, you guys will never get it right. I think there's merit in that, or like as a team, we're doing this. And if one person is off, like I've seen stuff, and it's kind of funny, but it's like driving home a teamwork thing is like, we're doing these clap jacks. And if anybody's off beat, like we're doing it again, or you go for a run or whatever. And it's just like instilling kind of like a discipline component of it. I think there's value in that. I do. I think there's value in that, and like your teammates holding you accountable and ensuring there's communication.
And a little bit of it's engagement of like, I'm not going to tell you what was wrong, but something was wrong with it. And then they all have to look around and be like, who's messing up? And then they're in it. They're in that session versus like, we're going to do all these knee hugs and like whatever stretches that they can do in their sleep.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing of warm-ups is engagement for me. Of like, how do I get them in this moment?
Yeah. Like you guys figure it out. You tell me what you did wrong. You know, they're like, I don't really know. It's like, I don't know, maybe talk amongst each other who messed up. And then they're like, so-and-so did this.
Exactly. And they're just like, hounding them for the rest of the day.
Yes. Like, don't mess up now. And they're like, look at this one person. He's like, yo, what? Like,
yeah.
But then back to what we were talking about earlier about playing games. It's like, do you remember the movie The Longest Yard? And like when they were playing that game because it rained, or like the guards watered the yard.
They're
like, we're doing some schoolyard bullshit. And it's like, then they're like, go back and playing the game. And they're like, what play are we going to run? They're like, I don't know. How about some schoolyard bullshit? They're like, yeah, like that's how I think about, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm like, when we're playing games, like, what are we going to do? I don't know, man. Figure it out. And they're like, yeah, like everybody's on board.
Let's make some shit up.
Yeah, for real. Like today's rules are, and like for some of the games, I change the rules every single day. Like, like today you can only tag them below the knee. And they're like, oh my gosh. It's like, yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Tomorrow you can only tag with your left hand. If it doesn't count, if it's not with your left hand. And they're like, whoa, coach, what the, you know, and you're just like, yeah, bro, like doesn't count. Like, and that's where it's fun.
We do these like movement sessions, right? With each team, and it's probably a part of like the answer of how do you make elastic athletes.
Yeah.
But just making sure not just like in the weight room means weights, like it's movement as well.
Yeah.
And I'll always end with some sort of 1v1, 3v3 competition. And we'll do the same drill again. And maybe it's just like, hey, 1v1, get past the defender, make a miss and score.
Yep.
Or sometimes like 3-on-3, if anyone makes it through, these three lose. Or stand your whole team here. We'll just change the dynamic a little bit each time. Or like you said, only tag below the knee. And it creates a whole new game.
Whole new game. I also love like winners play winners. I'm a huge like winner loser. You either won or you lost. There's no in between. Second place doesn't matter. I don't care about anything else. Like either you won or you did not. And you see their competitive side get out really quick. It's like, oh yeah, winners play winners. If you're not a winner, stand on the sideline and watch. And they're just like, they're like, what? Like, and I'm like, yeah, you lost, right?
Oh yeah, we'll bust out like the end of it if there's been two sides, and it's not always offense and defense, but it's like this group's over here, this group over here. I always end with like, all right, bring your best guy, whoever you vote, come stand forward, let's do it again.
Yeah.
Or be like, everyone stand on the end line, and on go, only your best person pops out. And so like they huddle up and decide who's going to pop out, and this group doesn't know who they're going to be against.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. But Anyways, man, anything you want to wrap up with, anything you want to finish on, anything that you're like, hey, I'd really like to, just say this.
Huh. Here's my nightmare. I don't know what my big point is. I don't know. I think biggest we talk about like the kind of the whole time of like I have very much in the search of like finding what works best, taking a dive into a lot of different methodologies, and I've gotten to see strength conditioning programs and private sector places and personal training places that have all the bells and whistles, and ones that we train when the bleachers are pushed back upstairs in the basketball court. And everywhere that I've been, like, it does not matter what tools you have at your disposal if you are a bad coach or if you can't get the buy-in from the group. Like, you can't coach a good session. It doesn't matter what tools you have. And I think people get super caught up in like following their methodology or like whatever they're a disciple of doing it as written or like using all the cool stuff or trying to do what the Power 5 schools do. I was like, no, just have a good session. Like, coach a good time, make it a good training session, make it a good stimulus. And the rest really takes care of itself.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I love what you're doing. I love watching you do what you do. I think it's awesome. Where can people find you and reach out to you at?
I guess my Instagram is just my name, Bobby Mullan, BOBBYOMULLAN. And then website's the same thing, just BobbyOMullan.com.
Awesome. Yeah. Bobby, appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on today.
Likewise, man. Thank you.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. It was a great conversation, and the 40 minutes-ish or so that we talked beforehand were great also. So thank you, brother. Guys, if you're listening, if you got anything from this, if you got encouraged, entertained, or you're like, dude, we literally do the same exact thing, which I think a lot of coaches do, or you're like, man, that's really good. Like, I should probably try that. Reach out to Bobby and let him know, like, hey, man, like, this resonated with me. I thought the same way. Like, we do spike ball as well, and our athletes love it. Yeah, reach out to him.
Burn skin off his hands, but
yeah, learn from his mistake. Don't burn your athletes' skin off their hands. But no, seriously, if you got something from this, do us a huge favor, share the show. Okay, that's the only way the show grows. It's the only way that the word gets out. It's the only way that we can continue to help impact coaches. So we're greatly appreciate that. And guys, we'll catch you all on the next one.
Sounds good. Thanks.
You're welcome.